Thank you so much for joining us for Belkins Growth Podcast, Season 3, Under the Spotlight. Today's a really cool day. I have one of the representatives for a really awesome company that we've been partnered with for a while. Founded in 2018, Koridor builds tech-led solutions to digitalize and modernize companies to the 21st century. They automate and streamline with an agile system that will ever evolve with your organization. And joining me today is their president, Sep. Sep, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Looking forward to this chat.
Absolutely, me too. So I gave the audience the overview as far as your services, but will you tell us in layman's terms, who is Koridor? What is it you guys do for somebody that has no idea?
Yeah, so Koridor is actually a pretty simple model. We're basically a dev shop, but what makes us special is how fast and quick we can get applications out, and also at our price point due to the system that we've designed on the back end. So we're able to utilize the new technology that's already out there, and we're able to build applications in a third of the time versus the traditional model does. So that's really what that makes us special. And we're able to do, because we're able to do it at 1/3 of the timeline, we're able to do it at 1/3 of the price as well.
Wow. Okay. So we're talking about companies that has got a really awesome idea and they need that product to go from their brain to the software. They need it to be created. You're coming in and you're getting them to market faster at a fraction of the cost of what they would traditionally experience hiring like a development team to come in and build it for them.
You got it. So, I mean, the best way I can explain it is even in our process, we really go targeting those startups, right? Those startups that basically are like, hey, I have an idea. But in today's world, especially in today's world, getting a dev team is very challenging. It's very hard to find good, talented tech players to come join your team, especially nowadays. And it's really expensive to go find a dev shop to do it, talking $250,000, $300,000, right? And so one of the biggest challenges that startups have is the entire concept of, okay, well, I have an idea, I don't have $300,000, right? And that's really where we come in as an advantage there, because we can act, and to be honest with you, even with those dev shops, the traditional model, you're doing what you're doing and you're spending $250,000, but at the end of the day, you're not building it out. Can we just pause for 2 seconds?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Bob, you're just entering the podcast like nobody's business.
Oh shit.
The guy literally could care less, just walks on in.
It's Bob's world. Everyone lives in it. What's up, dude?
So for us, a dev shop will be able to implement the software, but again, they can't give you fixed pricing because they're not adaptive, they're not predictive. So to them, it takes amount of time as it takes. So they charge you per an hour basis, whereas we do fixed pricing. And that's really, again, that's where our biggest competitive advantage is: timeline pricing, and it's fixed pricing.
That's interesting. What is causing the disparity between the need for dev teams and the existence of dev teams? Is it just that technology is growing too fast and the talent isn't growing? What's happening?
That's actually a great question. It's not that the tech is growing fast. Tech is growing really quickly. Think of your first iPhone, right? The next year was like the biggest upgrade. And then the following year is like a huge upgrade. You're seeing the same thing happening within software now. And one of the biggest aspects as to why devs aren't keeping up with the openings is because there's so much money to be had now. There's so many tech companies out there that are building products that essentially at this point, it's become critical that it becomes very challenging to keep pumping out devs while trying to keep up with the job openings. And honestly, it's not as easy for you to just go and be self-taught. There's a lot of well self-taught people that I know that are developers, but really it's not just about coding, but problem solving. And not everyone is good at that, right? So you may have an influx of developers, but they may not be great for you as a startup, for example, or even as a company. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So basically what you're saying
is Bob, they can see you. I'm so glad this isn't live. Literally, I just see your head in this corner. Oh my God, Brian, I'm sorry, man.
I love that. I just look in the corner
Oh my God, it's just a little head.
Yeah, I just see Bob crawling into the under the bonsai.
So
He's
much
coming in under the
worse.
bonsai. Creepy Bob, the VP of sales at Koridor.
Oh my God, that was amazing.
So in terms of that, just in general, so it sounds like they're like being able to do the job is not necessarily going to make you a great developer in the sense of working with startups that have an idea that need somebody to come in and actually see the go-to-market, have the vision, and then be able to apply it to the development process. If you just show up ready to write code, startups might not be a good fit. You might need to go just get hired by a company to write development or to write code for them based on what they need, where it's black and white.
Bang on. And you got the situation where you got junior devs that really don't know how to develop yet. They may know the language, they may know how to do things, but they haven't actually executed on an application yet. And that is huge, right? That's an aspect of which not everyone is ready to rip like that. And the other aspect that I would say is you do have access to foreign talent pool, right? Like you can bring in like Ukraine, for example, has a lot of dev teams, Serbia, Eastern Europe, mostly because of the price point, living versus income. But like, for example, you might go to China or India, and the biggest challenge you're going to find there is, for example, I know of a story where they got a great price from an Indian company, or it was a person, and basically they locked them out of the code, right? And they basically said, give us this much money, otherwise we're not releasing the code. And what jurisdictions do you have in those cases? And the trend we're noticing is that a lot of people are starting to come back inwards. Instead of being global, they're starting to be more, okay, can I find it local? I just don't want to deal with the outside world anymore. And 10 years ago, when it was fresh, people were building, for example, if you were an Indian in India building software, you were probably one of the few, right? So you probably weren't thinking maliciously. You were thinking, how do I give you the best job I possibly can? And today, they're so busy that they don't care anymore. There's no level of appreciation for that kind of stuff. We've even had people reach out to us from India. Very reversed, right? Because it's usually we go there. No, so they're like reaching out saying, we can't find devs and we need someone to take on our project. It's funny how the global shift has been happening slowly, especially in the developers world. But I would say because of the advancement of technology, because of how much technology is out there for developers, it has become a lot easier for people to just call themselves developers when they're not ready to be actual developers yet.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's almost like there should be and I don't know how you quantify this, but just thinking spitballing, it's almost like there should be a hierarchy. Like you have different levels of SE, you have different levels of engineers. There almost should be, when you can qualify a developer that has those soft skills or that has the visionary skills to be able to actually see how the product is going to be applied, and then to write code based on problem solving and critical thinking, and then apply that to the code, where you can filter some of those folks out. Because I would imagine that skill set is much more valuable than somebody that can just write the code.
Yeah, and to that point, we literally have a rule. If we find a developer who's been looking for a job for more than 6 months, they're no good.
Interesting.
Because as a developer, you should be able to find a job within a month or 2 months, even 3 months, including in today's US market. For example, our other office in Austin, we don't even bother hiring developers because they get snatched up from like U of T. They get snatched up by Facebook, Google, Apple. They're all there now, right? Their junior salaries are coming out of there. But those guys have systems. Those guys understand who they're hiring, and they know who they're bringing on, and they know how long it takes them to get them to the level they need them to be. And they're willing to invest in that because of the fact that they just need bodies. Whereas with startups, it's tough. You don't need the bodies, you need the mind, right? And so you need to really focus on who you're bringing on as a co-founder. And that co-founder, and to be honest, as a CEO, for example, as a startup, as the startup grows, you're learning with the company and you're moving along in the company timeline, right? But as a CTO, as a technical founder, you have to literally change your mindset in each stage, right? At the startup level, you're focused strictly on product and delivery and how that works out. On the second hand, you're more on the second stage, like series A and B, you're more focused on hiring. You're more focused on building a team, systemizing everything. It's no longer, it can't live in your head anymore. It has to live outside of that, right? It has to live among the team. So you're transitioning very heavily as a developer from being a startup co-founder to a growing co-founder.
That's fascinating. So would you summarize your offering as like a CTO replacement where that like somebody who has the idea but doesn't have a CTO, that technical mind, where you guys can come in, partner with that visionary, and then basically replace that function for them to execute on the development?
So that's where our biggest advantage has become, right? It's become the fact that we grow with you. Because we have the team, you get access to our product manager, you get access to our project manager, you get access to our dev team, you get access to QA. These are things that normal startups cannot do and achieve at the scale that there are. Even at Series A, you're just starting to think about that stuff. And that's where Koridor really becomes an advantage, because even on our website, we basically say we're your dedicated dev team, right? We're your team that basically becomes your entire aspect of the development side. And you just focus on the business side. And that's really where we're taking advantage of the startup world, is because the fact that as a startup, I have a business idea. I have an idea because I'm in the business, right? Like usually when we have someone coming in saying, hey, I have a great idea for, let's say, construction people, he comes from construction. That's why he has that idea, right? He's not a developer. He doesn't care about development. But what we end up doing in today's world is we basically go to startups and say, hey, I know you have no technical background, but I'm not willing to give you money until you figure it out. And you come out and kind of go, well, how is one person who's never been in tech is supposed to figure this out, right? And partnering with someone like Koridor, that's where we guide them through the entire technical process.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a real problem what you're talking about, because I've talked to folks that whether it's a mixer or a networking event, where they tell me their idea just to spitball it, and I'm looking at it with my mouth agape, where I'm like, this is incredible. Like, where are you at in the process? And they're like, I haven't even started the development yet, because it's just an idea, and nobody will give me money until I figure it out. And I'm like, well, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? We all know the answer, but really, like, from the founder's perspective, it becomes a lot more real once you start to actually try to make your dream or your idea a reality. And then you start running into all of these roadblocks.
100%.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say 100%. That's where and to be honest with you, as a business idea, as a business owner, development is one of those things that a lot of people look at software development like hardware development, right? If you're building a monitor, for example, it's got the same tech. You got to build the software into the tech, right? But once it works, right? And then you can build thousands of them and ship them out. Software is not like that. Software is ever changing. It's ever adapting. It's never a moment of like, okay, I'm done. Have a great day. Like, I don't need my dev team anymore. You have to build that team and infrastructure with it, because it's always adapting. It's always changing. And like you said, it's the chicken and egg problem, right? It's okay, I have a good idea, but I don't have the money for the dev team. And if I don't have the dev team, I can't have the chicken, right? So
exactly.
And whenever you want to go for the egg costs 200, 300K. And they sit back going, okay, well, investor, angel, Mr. Good friend of mine, can you invest 300K? And when an angel hears that, their immediate response is, okay, that's a lot of risk, right? That's taking on a huge amount of risk. Whereas, for example, our average projects are like, I don't know, 60, 65,000 now. Wow. And you're looking at it like, okay, I can have a fully functional software with a back end dev team supporting my product for 65,000. That all of a sudden becomes very appetizing to the angel investor.
Yeah, absolutely. And that leads me to another question that I have. So I would think that, we talked about some traditional, typical dev models where it's based on hourly, they bill their hours, and that those price tags can't be fixed. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Sep, but I'm guessing that part of the reason those price tags aren't fixed is because once you get into the project and you start understanding and uncovering the layers of what actually has to be done from the dev side, you realize that the project might take X percent longer to accomplish than what we initially had projected. So that project, like I had a buddy of mine who he built a mobile app built around sports gambling, and he got into the project thinking he was going to spend 50K, and he wound up walking away from it going, he wound up stopping. He didn't even continue with it. He wound up stopping at 120K invested and was like, I'm done. I'm not going to keep doing this because I don't know how much it's going to cost at the end. So help me understand a little. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's funny you say that, because I would say about 93% of projects always overrun on budget and overrun on timeline every single time.
Okay.
And there's a really good, reasonable explanation to it. And I'm going to help you understand that. So the biggest reason is because coding is an unpredictable development process. So whenever a developer says it will be 50K, they're thinking how long it will take them in their head. And developers are very good about thinking about the big picture and understanding what needs to get done. But for some reason, they're not project managers, right? They're nowhere near being project managers. So they lack the understanding of, okay, if it's going to take me a month, for example, to develop, or 2 months to develop, okay, great. But should I give myself some time in case things go wrong? They never do that. And if they did that, then the price tag would never be 50,000. It's always up 200K. And so you have to understand, like sometimes code breaks and it'll take that developer a day to figure out why. You know what I mean? Like a full day of just trying to figure out that's 8 hours. You know, a traditional developer getting paid at, like, say $100, $120 an hour, that's big money. You're talking about $1,000 just for him to try to figure out that bug. And so that's where our advantages really come through too, is the fact that because again, we're predictive, we've designed the application and we're building on top of it. And so when we build on top of it, we've already built in testing, we've already built in all the automations. So really it just becomes an application that we're just putting together. Right? Rather than building the entire building, we have all the skeletons, we have the frames, we plunk it and we just decorate it. Right?
Okay, no, that's interesting. So that was my next question was, how do you do it? Do you want to give us the keys to the city? So you guys, so when you come to these conversations, you already have kind of so for instance, at Belkins, we're industry agnostic. We're doing cold outreach. And if somebody comes to us in a space that we've worked in several different campaigns, we might not necessarily build their campaign from scratch. If we know what works, if we have template and copy that we know lands well, we might just take that template or that copy and then augment that to be customized to fit the client that we're working with. So it is theirs and it is unique, but it still kind of has the same general framework. So that's kind of similar is what you're saying. You guys have kind of a framework already, and then you basically take their needs and apply it.
Yeah. So imagine we've built all the modules. I don't want to, I hesitate to say that because a lot of dev shops do say that. They say, oh, we've already built it, we'll just rebuild it for you. And it doesn't slightly work like that, because as soon as you make any alterations, you're pretty much rebuilding the entire system. So our advantage is more on the side of, like, for example, we've made it easy to create buttons, or made it easy to create inputs. And so it becomes more of a, okay, you have all the tools, you have all the availability of things that you need to use, and you just basically grab it and use whatever you need to build what it is, right? So that's why I say, like, the infrastructure is there, because the infrastructure is your servers, it's back-end development, all that jazz, the testing, that's all your infrastructure, right? But the actual development is always from scratch for us, right? We're not grabbing another project and saying, okay, we're just going to mimic this. We're literally starting from zero. We just have all the tools available for us to accelerate that. And we built the infrastructure around the testing and the capabilities to be able to understand, to make it more of a predictable development process rather than an unpredictable version. And what I mean by predictable is exactly that, right? Where I know my code isn't going to break. Otherwise, the system won't let me put it in.
Yeah. Okay. So if I'm hearing you right, and I doubt that you've ever heard this analogy, but It's basically like, we got a potato. Now, is it going to be Mr. Potato Head or Mrs. Potato Head? Is it going to be hair or a hat? Because we've got the hair, we've got the nose. Is it going to be a mustache? We've got that. But we'll frame it up based on what you need specifically. We know that we already have built the specific tools. Do you ever encounter a client that wants something that you haven't done before, that you don't already have pre-built, or that you already?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So what does that look like?
All the time. Well, again, every client. So this is how I always approach this kind of a conversation: is every business is unique. All right. Everybody has their own process. Everybody has their own uniqueness that they bring to the table. But that just means that they're uniquely the same. Right. So there are fundamentals, right? There are fundamentals that every business has to follow in order to even achieve what it's trying to achieve. In that process, that's where we've automated it, right? So you can come, we've had uniqueness. My God, we built, for example, like a surveying company, right? For lawyers. That's one of the examples. But then we've also done a scheduling system for gig workers to go and pick up shifts to do stuff for people that want things done around the house. Like, those are two completely different business models, but we use the same infrastructure.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, no, this is super fascinating to me. I appreciate you diving into it. So
yeah,
because we jumped right into the weeds and I love it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But let me back up. I'm going to back up a little bit. I want to learn a little bit about your origin story. If you would give me some insight take me back to 2017, 2018, and talk me through the idea, the concept, the birthplace of Koridor. Give me some insight. Put me in your shoes.
Yeah. So I actually started a company. It was a home automation company back in 2005, I want to say. My God, it's been a while. But I was in university at the time. So for me, it was an opportunity to, I kind of found this niche. I was very good with tech. And so anyways, I started the company. And throughout the years, as I was developing the company, I had it for 10 years. I actually sold the company. But essentially, when I was working with the company, I always found that humans were very challenging to manage. And I don't want to be an alarmist with the whole AI robot thing, but if I could, I would.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. We could predict it. If we could predict people, we would predict them, but they're unpredictable.
Yeah, exactly. Right. The issue is that no matter how you want to look at it, I mean, just pure numbers, employees just cost more. So, but I don't take the approach of how do I replace a human? I've always taken the approach of how do I make that human more productive? Because in my mind, you need people no matter what, in my opinion. And at the end of the day, it's not a question of replacing them, but how to make them more productive, make them more useful, make them more efficient. And I think a lot of businesses actually fail on that end. They keep talking culture, they keep talking this stuff, but realistically, it's just like, look, you're not even efficient. You're not making them efficient. That makes them unhappy. That's why they want to work from home. Because this whole COVID thing was a huge bubble being burst in the sense that it's like, okay, well, look, I can get my 4 hours of work done at home. Why are you making me come to the office now? And that just shows you the inefficiency. And so when I was going through new automations, that was my number one thing, is how do I make my people more efficient? How do I make them more productive and effective at the company so that I don't have to hire a bunch of different people for different roles? So I was building in systems like nobody's business, Brian. Like you should have seen it. It was a gong show. And really what happened at the end was I came in and said, okay, if you looked at our competitor, our direct competitor, so someone who did the exact same amount of revenue as we did, we probably had half the employees that they did. So that's really where I thrived. And so as I was building those efficiencies, I was like, there has to be a software out there for this. And I couldn't find anything. And not only could I not find anything, I was trying to buy, like I tried doing custom solution. I went through that process as you talked about it, right? The 120,000, that's not a joke. It happens to every single person. And so I was like, I'm starting my own software company. That was my decision. And in 2017, I started learning how to build software, how to design software, and again, I've had a tech background. So for me, that wasn't a complete switch in the brain. But At the same time, it is completely different because now you're not just selling tech, but you're trying to build the tech. I went through the whole process. We failed the first round because we built a software that was not at all flexible. It was out of the box, but it was a full ERP for everybody, right? So if you signed up with us, your system was fully functional through this system and it worked. Everything worked. The problem was, one thing I didn't take into consideration was human habits. We're a species of habits.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And I did not realize how much of an impact that will have on selling software. But essentially, people were like, "Hey, I love your project management tool, but I want to use my proposal system." And I would say, "Look, the proposal system is better. You're getting it anyways, but ours is better." And they're like, "Yeah, but I like mine." And so that's where we really saw the failure. But what we noticed was the infrastructure. And that's how we came about. Now we call it Koridor 2.0, is the way we approach this, the system design, the way I approach the system design. And again, because I didn't come from the profession, I take a very unique approach and I destroy people who, if you put me one-on-one with a product manager, you can talk to me about a business and I'll be like, this is what your software is going to look like. And that, because the reason for that is because of my business background. I was in business for 10 years. I did finance. I did accounting. I did marketing. I did sales. I did installation. I was roll up your sleeves in the mud with my guys on site, right? So I have empathy for all those roles. And so I was able to build it. And to this day, I'm still able to do that. I'll use one example where we were working with a client and he was like, I want to build this. And I was like, look, I love your big vision. Bring it down, right? You need to simplify it. And to be honest with you, that's my experience from Koridor 1.0, right? He was trying to do it all. And I was like, look, you need to change habits very slowly. So dominate one area. That's why everyone always says, pick a niche, stick to that niche, right? Yeah. And dominate that area and then slowly expand. And that's where you're really going to take advantage of things. So that's my history. So here we are today, and we got a big team here at Koridor, which is fun with amazing culture. Thankfully, like I learned that through my history as well, and we're ever growing. So it's been a blast.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, you guys, from my experience, you guys have an incredible team. If you shameless plug for the Koridor TikTok channel, Koridor app at Koridor app on TikTok and on Instagram as well. Ariana,
we try to keep that fun and comedic. Yeah, that's funny.
I love it. No, it looks great. Super relatable.
Thank you for that plug. That's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all good. I got you. No, so talk to me about all right, I understand the concept. I understand the birthplace. Talk to me about what that go-to-market looked like for you in terms of actually gaining clients. What was your strategy in terms of launching, breaking ground, getting Koridor in front and starting to grow based on, so you already had done, based on experience, it sounds like you've done the R&D and so you've done the analyzing of the product market fit. You knew that the product market fit was there if you could do it properly. And so what did that look like from your perspective in terms of now that I already know that there's more than likely a need, how can I make Koridor something that people care about and then start to actually gain clients and go to market?
We actually originally, when we started Koridor 2.0, I'll always call 2.0 as the new model. But essentially when we started, we were actually targeting businesses because we see a huge advantage with going to a business. And again, every business is nuanced. Every business has its own uniqueness, but that just uniquely means they're the exact same, right? And so we approached it with the model of, look, we're here to build you exactly what you want with all of your automation. Really, we went the exact opposite way, right? It was like, before we were too restrictive, now we're like, we'll fully open. And we basically went to them and said, look, here's the full system. Here's the full option. We're not breaking a single habit. We're just automating those tasks. We're making it more efficient. And that was good. It worked for us. It was really good. It kept building momentum. But the sales cycles were incredibly long. We never did cold calling. You and I have talked about that. I don't think cold calling works in today's world. I think today especially now after COVID. I don't know what happened to everybody during COVID, but I think they got like super called.
Yeah.
But emailing is a lot better. It's more efficient. It's more effective. And if they read that title, that they will read the email, right? And with a phone call, it's really tough to even get them to listen for the first 10 seconds even.
Yeah.
So we actually, by luck, fell into a couple of situations with startups. And the startups were basically like, hey, like from what you're explaining to me, you can build me my idea. And here's what my idea is. And I was kind of like, actually, yeah, we could build that. And so it actually just turned out to be one of those happy accidents. Entrepreneurs are notoriously, they always talk about how, it's tough to say because a lot of entrepreneurs, I would say most successful entrepreneurs in my mind, they got lucky. There's always a moment in time when they got lucky. They know it. We all know it. I know it. That's not taking away from their hard work because you got to pound the pavement until you hit that luck. And that's what we did. Think about it. Like we kept going. We didn't stop, but we got lucky with the startup world and it just kind of happy accident worked together. And it ended up being one of those models where we were flipping companies within the month. Right. So we went from a sales cycle of like 6 months to a month to 2 months max. 2 months was like excessive. The other day, a couple of weeks ago, we signed a client in a week. Literally,
oh my goodness.
So literally first conversation, he downloaded our online playbook thing. We called him, we set up a meeting the next day. He met with me the same day. We met with him another time the following the weekend. And we had a signed contract within the week.
That is unbelievable, man.
So
how did you drive that business? I have to ask, what was your source?
Of course.
Did he find you guys on social media? Did you market to him?
So I think with us, it's always been a multi-prong attack. And like you said, our social media is probably one of the most prompt. We put a lot of effort. With my marketing team, I actually joke with them. I say we're a content marketing company. We just happen to build software, right?
I love it.
We actually build content for startups and we just happen to build software at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think Gary Vee talks about this all the time. He's been saying it for 10 years. Everyone kind of stopped listening to him, but content is king in today's world. And to be honest with you, I don't really know how we got him, but if you go to our website, if you go to our social media, if you find us anywhere online, even if you got an email from us, it's all very universal language. It kind of creates that storytelling aspect. So yeah, I don't know where we picked him up. Actually, to be honest with you, Bob probably knows that better. Bob is our VP of sales.
Sure.
I would say the biggest feedback we always get is, I found you guys online, then I went to your website. It's taking them through the journey. They see us online, they go, interesting, I have a problem like that. How do you solve my problem? Then we become a desire because then we're just like, hey, we can do it faster, better than everybody else. And everybody every year wants it faster and better, faster and better, faster and cheaper, right? So that's kind of the model of life. Exactly. So we've done some email campaigns, like those are effective as well. I think you just have to take a multi-prong approach. I don't think you can just take one single approach anymore, not in modern world. And you just have to keep, and I think one of the things that most people fall short on is understanding that you have to give your customer value first before you try to get value. Absolutely. Does that make sense? Because theoretically, this guy could have slipped through our radar, but it's because he downloaded our playbook. And that playbook took me a week to build, let's say. But now that's going to create dividend just like this on its own.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that about presenting value, working at Belkins and partnering with them as VP of sales here, helping our SEs understand that until they understand the value, they have no idea whether they really can justify the expense or the investment. If somebody comes to us and says, hey, I've got $1,000 to spend, just because that's outside of our price range or outside of our investment model, doesn't mean we don't talk to them, because when they understand the value that we bring, there's a lot of opportunity there. There's a lot of times that prospects will turn into clients and say, yeah, no, we see the value, we recognize it, we're going to find this money. We're going to go get this money from the marketing department or from the whatever the specific case may be. So that really resonates with me quite a bit. One thing that I want to touch on though, and it's a little bit of a deviation, but we can always circle back here because I have some more questions for you.
I love deviations.
One thing, okay, cool. One thing that I love about Koridor specifically, when you go to your Instagram, you go to your TikTok, you go to your website, if I find you on LinkedIn, anywhere that I find you, your unique value proposition, your mission statement, your company identity is in no uncertain terms. There's continuity on every platform where I know who Koridor is, regardless of where I find you, which it's really kind of surprising sometimes where you look up other companies and there might be different verbiage, there might be different sentences. And it's like, how important is having a clear and defined company identity to you as you've built this business?
Massive. In my opinion, in order to draw clients, in order to bring on customers, not only do you have to provide them value, that set aside, but also the fact that you got to tell a story. And I think the entire aspect of telling a story in today's modern world is almost dead. There's so many of those big companies that are just like, they're just in existence with their brand name and they stop telling a story. Like, why do you exist? And Simon Sinek, he's one of my favorite. The guy is brilliant in his own realm, where he speaks about the why and how and what and like the circle, the three circles. To me, that's massive. And a lot of people don't realize these platforms, they're not only for sales, but also for recruiting. And so when you look dysfunctional in those platforms, you are theoretically dysfunctional within your own organization. Right. And so for us, it's always about, and this is what I challenge my marketing team on a regular basis, even on my sales team. We challenge them to just say, look, you got to tell that story. You got to understand where that person is in that story and be able to tell the rest of it. Right. Because we always enter at different points. Right. We're sometimes at the point where, oh my God, these guys are hilarious. And, oh, I can start a company that easily and that quickly. I have an idea. I have 60K laying around, because there's a lot of times, and I always tell people this, but whatever idea you have, I guarantee you, I absolutely guarantee you, there's 100 other people with that exact same idea. Okay. Yeah. It's the ones that actually pull the trigger that have the opportunity to succeed. You've always had this, right? You're like, oh, I had that idea. Someone just built it faster. Yeah. We share experiences with so many different people that are among us, right? I don't know if you've ever heard of 16 personalities. Have you ever taken like a personality test?
Yeah.
Okay. So a personality test, there's only 16 personalities. So there's billions of people with 16 commonalities. So realistically, you can't tell me that you are very unique in the way you've been raised or worked or your environment. That's why we call it stereotypes, right? I'll make a joke about myself. I'm Persian. And the stereotype is white BMWs, right?
Yeah.
Or black BMWs. Yeah. We've all had different experiences, but for some reason, Persians just love their BMWs. And so at the end of the day, that's what I always tell my people is, look, everybody has the similar experience. Everyone's going through the same idea. How do we catch them at the right time? And how do we tell the rest of the story? Like how this could end for them. And I think that continuity and like bringing everything and having everything speak together, because again, you're telling one full story and everybody has LinkedIn, everybody's got Facebook, everyone's got Instagram. Okay, select few have TikTok, but that's a huge growing avenue right now. And so again, that telling that one continuous story is, I think, is a major aspect of why we're able to succeed in the way you just said.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I hope that our listeners really pick that up, because it's huge. And like you said, if you're dysfunctional on those different platforms, then you're essentially dysfunctional as an organization.
Yep.
You said something that resonates with me so much. I was just talking to a good friend of mine recently about a situation in the business world it's pretty high profile, pop culture, you would say. And he reached out to me about it. And I just said to him, I said, so many dreams die in a book sitting on a shelf because they didn't actually take action to bring it to fruition.
I love that one. Yeah.
yeah, I was like the difference between an awesome idea and an awesome product is execution. Like actually doing it,
100%.
pulling the
100%.
trigger. Like that, the nice vacation that you think would be amazing, those ideas turn into memories if you actually pull the trigger and it was the best vacation of your life and you put the right people together.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, but it's a lot easier said than done though.
Yeah. And okay, so like, have you ever read the book like The Secret?
Yeah, The Secret. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so books like that, I'm not going to get into the philosophical of it. I love that book for what it overly explains, like the concept. Tony Robbins kind of goes through it as well, and it works. But here's the thing. A lot of people read that book and they're just like, I'm thinking it. Come on, universe, give it to me. It's not like that. It's that if you set your mind, right? It's setting your mind. That's the thing that everybody misses. Everyone thinks, okay, I just have to think it. No. You got to set your mind. You almost have to change your entire brain concept of understanding of where you're at. Change your state of mind so that all the actions or all of the decisions you're going to make every single day is to create that state. And that's what it's just a human biology. It's not even like a secret. Right? Secret, in my opinion, the secret, in my opinion, dumbs it down. But a lot of people take that too literally, where they're like, if you think it, it happens. Well, no, relax. It's a little more like a state of mind than it is like just, I thought of it, why didn't it happen? And then they become really disheartened when it doesn't happen. And that's where it's exactly what you said, right? I know a bunch of people who read a bunch of books, and this is where I go with, this is why academia is academia and doers are doers. They call it, right? They call it book smart and street smart. And the biggest difference is book smart, they're too comfortable in their books. It's predictable. It's understandable. I can have an answer, right? Whereas street smart is more like the guys who are just like, yo, throw me in the bullpen. Let's see what happens. Right?
Yeah, exactly. They're out there like, all right, throw it at me. Let me see what I can handle. And they get
forget the book.
Forget
the book. Yeah, exactly. So it's exactly what you said. It's all about action. Really, it always comes down to just simply acting on that idea, because realistically, you might be that guy who thought it, and then someone else is gonna think of it and say, see, that guy made it, but like I thought of it. Like I'm smart as that guy. That's how they always approach it, right? Is like, I'm just as smart as that guy because I thought about it. Yeah, it's not about being smart. It's about the state of mind. It's about the focus. It's the drive. It's the grit. And I really love grit. If any of your listeners, if you want to read any book, Grit is a great book. I love that book, but it basically speaks to the state of mind, right? Like you really have to drive forward and you really have to go after what you want. And you can't just quit. You can't just give up. You can't roll over.
Yeah, no, I love that. And if I think that that book is Angela Duckworth, I think wrote Grit.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
So if you're listening, Angela Duckworth, Grit, it is an incredible book. Also, not to shit on Rhonda Byrne, Secrets is a really great book too. But once you read it, manifestation is only a part of it. Manifestation is beautiful and it's great, but it'll only get you part of the way there. If you manifest $1 million in front of your house, it might not show up there tomorrow if you don't do anything to earn that.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Okay, so look, the secret manifestation, sure, I'm on board, but I hate when people sit in front of me and say, I read The Secret, I am now thinking I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm like, it's not about thinking. Yeah, you got to set your mindset to wanting to be a millionaire. And then your everyday things that you make a decision on, that just happens naturally. Like you're not even subconsciously thinking about it. You're literally going to always drive towards that $1 million concept. That's a state of mind.
Yeah.
Me thinking it and still acting the way I was acting, nothing's going to change.
Absolutely. No, yeah. This is
we went a little, went in more the personal stuff, but and I think that's a huge aspect of startups and entrepreneurs. An entrepreneur is someone who can literally understand the academic side, but also act on that academic side. The street
Yeah.
smarts is critical in any startup. As Koridor, we deal with startups all the time. We talk to them all the time and we see it. There's a lot of times where we have an academia, a person who's just academic, come to us and say, look, I don't want to deal with anything. Here's my sales guy. Here's you. Take it. This is my business idea. And that happens. And that's successful in its own way. But you have to understand your advantages and disadvantages and build your business around it.
Got it. No, this is good. In terms of your space, so I love this discussion around soft dev, and I think that it's super poignant, especially right now. What would you say are common misconceptions when people look at your industry, when they look at, and maybe it's, I mean, I don't know, maybe for me, I'm like, it's the software developer that just got out of school that thinks that they're going to be able to go in and immediately start producing when they're not necessarily a critical thinker. But no, from your side, what are common misconceptions that when somebody who maybe doesn't know or they're looking at your space that they see or think, or from the startup founder's perspective that they feel when looking at your space or looking at what it is that you guys do?
So as a startup, as an entrepreneur, the biggest common misconception is that every developer is the same. And it's exactly what you said, right? There's junior developers, there's senior developers, there's developers for startups, there's developers for growth. No one is the same. And it frustrates us incredibly at Koridor because, and I'll use this as a funny analogy, but think of it as like you date a girl for the first time, right? Like guys are referred to as like, oh, they're all so mean to women, but they got their heart broken the first time, right? And that's why they're mean to women all of a sudden, right? They haven't resolved that trauma. And it's the same for startups is they'll deal with someone, they'll get their heart broken because it's their heart, it's their passion, it's their love, it's baby. And they get their heart broken and then they're like, every developer is stupid. They go the exact opposite direction. And really, we've dealt with both. We've dealt with brand new startups and we've dealt with startups. I'll use an example of one of our recent clients. His name is Sam Lux. We actually did a podcast with him. And literally he was like, yeah, you guys were amazing. Because he knew what was going to happen. He knew all the steps. He knew, okay, when they say 2 months, they don't really mean it. Actually, that was a surprise for them because we did actually deliver it. But the misconception is that every developer is the same and that every developer is a brilliant, genius human being. And the other misconception is that if he tells me a month, that it will be done in a month. And if it's not, all hell is going to be let loose. And so that would be the biggest misconception on the entrepreneur side and the business side. Even businesses have been burnt by this, like exact same way. Yeah. On the developer side, I think one of the biggest thing that developers, especially new graduate developers, I always tell this to our new hires every single time. I say, I don't care if you can code. Because at the end of the day, you may be able to code, but coding is something I can always teach you. I can't teach you to problem solve. So as a developer, one of the biggest misconception is that I just need to know how to code. And that's not true. Coding to me is language. You can learn languages. Learning to problem solve is a completely different aspect. And I would say if you're learning how to code, focus on learning how to solve a problem, because I can write code very quickly in one day. I can write a full script, but it'll break. And you have to figure out why it broke. And a lot of jokes that are going around in like TikTok and Instagram is they'll just delete the test that failed. Yeah. And then they run it, it works, and they're like, perfect, push. Great. Shoot. Like problem solving. That's the biggest misconception on the development side. And that's what we do every day. Like even here at Koridor, we're sitting here, a client will send us, this isn't working. Well, what do you think we're doing? We have to solve that problem. So we got to figure out, okay, what did they do? How did they do it? And a couple of our clients have gotten irritated with us asking like 1,000 questions, but it's like, you're basically giving us something. And then if you don't answer our questions, we're shooting in the dark. In terms of Koridor, as we kind of wrap up, what is next for you guys? I mean, you guys have grown quite a bit. It seems like you're really at the cutting edge of your space in terms of the way that you go to market. Super impressive model. What's next? What's on the horizon for you guys? So we're actually growing internally. So again, that focus on the niche, that's where we're at. We're very focused on that concept of startups. But the other aspect that we're actually expanding out is we've learned through the buyer's journey is that we can also catch startups a little bit earlier. And that I don't mean that in a malicious way, but like we've actually created Founders Academy. And it's strictly based around, it's a course that we've designed that helps founders, what we just talked about all of this podcast, right? Is it revolves completely around the fact that how to think about product, what is software, how to think about it when you're hiring. That doesn't include us. If you have a co-founder, it helps you understand what your co-founder is good at and really focusing on that. And we've also come in and says, okay, we do an entire section on like sales, marketing, content, how to design your content, how to design your sales, pre-selling your software before you start building your software and dumping 200, 300K into software. So we've built this Founder Academy. That one is a big one. That one's actually launching next week. So we're super excited about that. And I think we have over 200 people signed up. So that's awesome. And then on the other side, we're looking at creating an investment fund to help some of those, exactly what you said, right? You were talking to the guy and he's like, he has this brilliant idea. There's Koridor, there's the Founders Academy to help them. And then we bring in the funding aspect as well. And we know we can deliver the product, right? I think the statistics is 63% of companies and startups, well, 90% of startups fail. 63% of those 90% fail just because of the product. They don't deliver the product they were supposed to build in the first spot. They don't even finish the product. Like you said, your buddy, right? With the app, he just quit because it was just costing too much, right? So 63% of software startups fail at just the product level. So now I'm coming in and saying, I will have 100% complete. That gives them the opportunity to go out there and become more profitable or even have a chance of success. Like I said, every entrepreneur, we get lucky at one point, and that luck really drives this whole thing forward. And so if you fail at the product level, you really don't have an opportunity to get lucky. And so with our investment fund, we're hoping to create that ability to give our portfolio the opportunity to pass, to be able to get through the product and really get that lucky. And then we're hoping to triple pretty much what Silicon Valley is hoping for because of the fact that the product comes out.
That's awesome. No, that's incredible. I love to hear that. Their masterclass goes in T-minus 5 days, 20 hours-ish. You're going to learn to understand the product development cycle. You're going to be prepared for common pitfalls starting your own business. They're going to give you a playbook that helps you bring your idea to reality and understand how to grow your business into an actual success story. And if you get this video in time, you can use code START now to save 50% off the first 2-tier price packages on Koridor.com.
Yeah. And actually, we're going to be launching the non-live versions anyways. So so that code you just gave will be applicable even after the launch date. So it'll be a gift for your entire team as well.
I love that. That's awesome. Listen, Sep, it has been my absolute pleasure to talk through this with you. I appreciate your time so much. And if you've been listening, thank you for joining Belkins Season 3 Growth Podcast. You know, our time, it's the most valuable thing we have. And so I appreciate you spending it with me.
Thank you, Brian. Really appreciate being here. Thank you for asking for